I didn't get selected for service in 75th just because I was a woman. I got selected because I was the most qualified candidate.
I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles. It hasn't made us more effective, hasn't made us more lethal, has made fighting more complicated.
The Ruach HaKodesh of Ha'Adonai is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those oppressed, to proclaim the acceptable year of Ha'Adonai. Hallelujah.
Turn with me to the 4th chapter of Luke, verse 18. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He hath sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised. Jesus took up the book in the temple and read these words, and impressed the fact because of the manifestation of the work he was doing.
A reading from the scroll of the prophet Isaiah. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to bring good news. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, proclaim liberty to the captives, and recovery of sight to the blind, to the opening of the prison for those who are bound, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor.
You are now riding with the Ruach for Yahuwah. Kahan tells a Dr. Foulmouth Kahan, so you know who's sick. The message don't reach ya. Trying to learn from social media, you need a teacher. Get the message. Dumbing down your mind. Yahuwah sent me to Foulmouth Kahan to raise your conscience. By Hashem and Mashiach, the Ruach HaKodesh leaves them confined. The message don't reach ya. Trying to learn from social media, you need a teacher. Dumbing down your mind. Yahuwah sent me to Foulmouth Kahan to raise your conscience. By Hashem and Mashiach, the Ruach HaKodesh leaves them confined. Recognizing that I volunteered as a ranger, fully knowing the hazards of my chosen profession, I will always endeavor to uphold the prestige, honor, and high esprit de corps of the Rangers, acknowledging the fact that a Ranger is a more elite soldier who arrives at the cutting edge of battle by land, sea, or air. I accept the fact that as a Ranger, my country expects me to move further, faster, and fight harder than any other soldier. Never shall I fool my comrades. I will always keep myself mentally alert, physically strong, and morally straight, and I will shoulder more than my share of the task, whatever it may be, 100%, and then some. Gallantly will I show the world that I am a specially selected and well-trained soldier. My courtesy to superior officers, neatness of dress, and care of equipment shall set the example for others to follow. Energetically will I meet the enemies of my country. I shall defeat them on the field of battle, for I am better trained and will fight with all my might. Surrender is not a Ranger word. I will never leave a fallen comrade to fall into the hands of the enemy, and under no circumstances will I embarrass my country. Readily will I display the intentional fortitude required to fight on to the Ranger objective and complete the mission, though I be the lone survivor. Rangers lead the way. It's a fact, bro. Rangers lead the way, all the way. As a matter of fact, thank all the veterans for your service. You're amongst the elite. If you put your life on the line for your country, I have the highest, most respect for you. But I want to talk about a very controversial topic today. Welcome to another episode of Riding with the RUACH. I am your host. The foul-mouthed Kahan tells the Dark Rangers lead the way, all the way. Now, many of you may have seen posts about the U.S. Army has opened the Ranger School and Ranger Regiment to women. Now, let me make something abundantly clear. Just because someone completed the Ranger School, which when I was in the military was quite the feat. It was quite a task. That school has been watered down now. But I understand Trump's current Secretary of Defense is saying women shouldn't be in combat, and he's going to make one standard for both males and females.
Women in combat.
Because I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles.
And it's no longer going to be lowered at a female standard, because after the Obama administration, somewhere around 2015, females started coming into the Ranger Regiment. Now, to complete the Ranger School, you get a Ranger tab. But in order to earn that scroll of the 75th Ranger Regiment, you have to be selected for the 75th. 175, 275, or 375 are the headquarter companies or the reconnaissance, somewhere in the 75th. And so now I have females over in the 75th. I would like you to leave your honest comments under this video. We need to have your feedback and participation, and keep it all the way real. You know, we keep it 100 over here and then some.
I didn't get selected for service in 75th just because I was a woman. I got selected because I was the most qualified candidate.
Should a woman be in combat arms in general? Should a woman be on the front lines? Now, I know many of you may have seen the post about the U.S. Army has actually opened a Ranger School and has opened a Ranger Regiment to women, with the first women graduating from the Ranger School in 2015. Now, a lot of men, a lot of Rangers that's actually been through the course, whether you went through RIP or RAPS, well, saying that is BS. A number of women, they say, have successfully completed the rigorous training and earned the Ranger tab. But here's what they're not really saying. That the standards was lowered. That they was given more opportunities than a regular guy that actually went through Ranger School and would have actually been a no-go. Those women were actually recycled and given other opportunities. They was allowed to return to the barracks to take showers. So now the Army is talking about scraps gender neutral standards.
In the Army, no more pull-ups at all. You could do a leg tuck. Too many women failed that, so they could do a plank. In the Marines, women can do half as many pull-ups, achieve a perfect score. And then what happened is a lot of women were complaining because they felt singled out.
This pushed by this discredited social engineering. It structures engineering design a bridge that collapsed.
So they created a gender-neutral test. That was the same test for men and women, kind of between the two standards, which I disagree with. I think it should be the higher standard. Less than 10% of men failed, 65% of women failed.
So they figure out what went wrong before they replace the bridge. When a military social experiment collapsed, social engineering and experts who designed that experiment never admits their mistakes.
So 55 to 65% failed a gender-neutral test designed to accommodate women. There is no way to lower the standards anymore and still have women in physical combat roles. We have lowered the standards of physical combat readiness to a degree that frankly is embarrassing to accommodate women, and the majority of them still.
This brother has utterly disproved this woman, yet still she wishes to engage in polemics with no validity to anything that she's alleging.
Fail. Well, you told me you didn't think it was true.
Okay. Are you going to let me finish?
Well, I know, but I'm saying there's disagreeing and there's truth.
misguided social policies are rarely reversed. But this just happened when the U.S. Army reversed the course on the much anticipated Army Combat Fitness Test, ACFT. Now, shortly after the Obama administration opened combat arms units to women in 2015, the officials decided to create the ACFT as a replacement for the Army Physical Fitness Test. So the ACFT was supposed to have gender-neutral standards identical for men and women, but the structure of the gender equality has crumbled under the weight of reality. So due to persistently high failure rates, primarily amongst the female trainees, the Army decided to scrap the concept of the gender neutrality in the ACFT. So instead, exercise requirements and test scores will be gender norm and different for men and women, with some standards lower than before. This is how females are becoming rangers. This is why they're talking about becoming SEALs and special forces. Why does this matter? This matters because the entire experiment with women in combat has been built on egalitarian theories that did not survive contact with reality. As explained in the detailed CMR policy analysis, the Army's stunning reversal belied numerous promises from social engineers and experts advising the Pentagon on what should be done to gender integrate direct ground combat units such as infantry. Combat Fitness Test, FICO forces Army to drop gender neutral standards. So in 2015, the Defense Secretary, Ashton Carter, ignored the requests of the Marine Commandant General Joseph Dunford that some infantry and special operation forces unit remain all male. Carter ordered all combat positions to be open for women, vigorously denying that they would receive special treatment and training. So, they lied saying that the women wouldn't receive special treatment, but they did. In subsequent weeks, all of the military services repeatedly promised that if women were assigned to infantry, armor, artillery, and special operation forces like Rangers, right? The 75th Ranger Regiment is a special forces operation. Understand that. That's special forces. That's special operations. So concerning about possible reduction in combat effectiveness can be addressed by the effective leadership and gender neutral standards. So now the Army has given up on the gender neutral standards due to the high failure rates among women during the 3 years of diagnostic trials. In other words, a high percentage of women has fell. They've proven to be incapable of doing what men have done. The tougher 6-event combat fitness test will be gender norm, like the 3-event physical fitness test that the Army used 40 years ago. And so this did not happen because of the solid research that the Marine Corps produced in 2015, but because of the recent data produced by RAND, a Defense Department contractor that has long supported progressive policies that are deeply embedded in today's woke military. Caught that, right? Woke military? Part of the woke culture? That came in with the Clinton administration. Let's not forget that. Don't ask, don't tell. Under Billy Clinton. I didn't inhale, though. So the Army's reluctant recognition that gender neutral standards do not work raises another question. With diversity assigned priority in today's woke, caught that right? Woke military, sort of with the Clinton administration, don't ask, don't tell. Why would gender neutral standards work any better in advanced training for the infantry of special operation forces? The previous physical fitness test involved gender norms, sit-ups, push-ups, and a 2-mile run that could be done anywhere. The new 6th event, ACFT, initiated by the Army Chief of Staff, General Mark Milley, Defense Secretary Mark Esper, and Army Sergeant Major Dan Daly, required expensive equipment, gender and age neutral standards, and considerable time to prepare for the test, right? So requirements for all participants included the leg tuck, pulling the knees up while suspended on a high bar. So in other words, you don't have to do the pull-ups anymore. You could just do damn knees to your chest. Why do you think they did that? They did that so that females could fit in. Listen, I'm not being genderly biased. I'm just being truthful. A 25-meter sprint, drag, and carry a 90-pound sled was 2 40-pound kettlebells. Throwing a 10-pound medicine ball backwards over the head release push-ups. That means hands and arms are lifted at the bottom of the push-up, and a 2-mile run. So controversy also centered around the age gender neutral standards that observably suggested that a 4-star general female X-ray technician and an 82nd airborne soldier should have to meet the same physical fitness standards. The original ACFT tried to tailor requirements for individuals with a range of different requirements for heavy, significant, or moderate physical demands in vigorous occupations. An infantry-bound soldier, for example, had to perform 30 hand-release push-ups to earn a minimum score on the event compared to a 10 push-ups for other headed for less strenuous occupations. The experiment started to fall apart in 2019 when 85%, y'all hear this? When 85% of female soldiers failed to pass. 85%. In response to the congressional pressure, ACFT 2.0 allowed the choice of 2-minute plank exercises instead of the leg tuck, and an occupational 2.5-mile walk instead of a 2-mile run. The military becoming a joke. Version 3.0 of the ACFT contrived the system to evaluate women's scores in performance bands or tiers, comparing women's performance to men's. The top 1% of both men and women, for example, will be rated in the platinum group, even though their performance level were dramatically different. You see the deception? You see the deception? And you know what's woefully sad about this? It's that the women that pass these things, they really believe that they're qualified. They really believe that they can compete on the level with the top man. So this color-coded, gender-neutral tiers illusion fool no one, especially when women continue to fail at significantly higher rates. So RAD responded. Congressional orders, right? Congress ordered an independent study of the increasingly controversial ACFT. And the RAND Corporation conducted the study in 2021, gathering data from 630,000 tests with 460,000 soldiers. The results was dismal. Only 52% of active duty enlisted women compared to 92% of the men were able to pass the FT, right? Among officers, women pass rates were higher, 72% compared to 96% of male officers. Pass rates were lower in the National Guards and Reserves. RAND also noted that the top 10 MOS's pass rates for regular Army enlisted women range from 89% to 65%, and the bottom 10 were 44% to 31%. In comparison to the pass rates for regular Army enlisted men, in the top 10's MOS's were quite high, 100%, 98% pass rates for men, and the bottom 10 was 86% and 83%. So the RAND report provided several caveats, but the empirical data were quite clear. Theories about physical gender equality in the military combat training were inconsistent with physical reality. The Army Combat Fitness Test shortly released the RAND report in March. The Army announced that the ACFT 4.0, which reneged on the previous promise to implement gender-neutral standards. So the new gender norm standard changed the requirements in scoring tables. It dropped the leg tuck, so no more ladies are gonna get through by being able to tuck their legs to their chest. You're gonna have to do a pull-up. It dropped the leg tucks altogether. It abandoned the attempts to match the person to the job. No more of that. And the toughest test requirements for heavier occupations. It dropped it. So like the old Army test, the ACFT 4.0 measures basic physical fitness, not readiness for advanced combat training. Commenting on this option, the RAND report cautioned that gender norm, the ACFT, would ensure partially in pass rates between groups, but it would also require the Army to accept the difference in the potential combat readiness among soldiers who are held to different testing standards. So the Army accepted that trade-off. So where does this end? If the experts could not deliver gender-neutral standards on a preliminary fitness test, why should anyone believe that the officials pushing this diversity will maintain gender-neutral standards in advanced training for combat arms? Welcome to the new Special Operations Norm Softening Standards, watering you down, making you in the Pillsbury Dole Rangers. Cotton candy Navy SEALs. In August 2015, the Obama administration ordered that all combat arms units be open to women. That's that DEI, y'all, without exceptions. Has Obama ever been in the U.S. military, y'all? Has Obama ever served in combat arms, y'all? Women have served with courage in harm's way, but all male units affected are trained to attack the enemy with deliberate offensive action. Attention focused on 3 female soldiers at Fort Benning who deserve congratulations for getting through the tough Ranger School course. However, as Rangers train author James Hansen reported in his book, Stand Down, how social justice warriors are sabotaging America's military. In some cases, the female trainees were forgiven major errors that would have caused male trainees to be dropped from the course. Defense Secretary Carter dismissed controversy. They want to water us down, brothers. They want to water us down. My question to you is, do you want a female? And you got the soy boys out there that's willing to say, yeah, well, female, she's a better marksman and so on and so forth. In a combat situation, do you want that Ranger buddy next to you, your Ranger brother, or do you want a Ranger sister next to you? I'm going to go off my brother every day, all day. You can like that, understand it, believe it or not. If I offended you, I meant to. If I get wounded, she's going to be willing to carry me. But the Defense Secretary Carter dismissed the controversy, promising that every service member would have to meet the standards of the job they wish to fill. And there must be no quotas or perceptions thereof. The Air Force also promised strict adherence to the merit-based system without special preferences or undue pressure to increase numbers at the expense of merit. Nevertheless, the CMR reported previously in March 2021, General Richard D. Clake, commander of the Special Operations Command, SOCOM, issued a paradigm changing diversity and inclusion strategic plan, which repeatedly stated without evidence diversity is an operational imperative. SOCOM mandate appears to have changed norms in Air Force Special Tactics training for combat controllers who operate closely with Special Operations Forces command teams. In January, the Air Force Times reviewed and reported on a detailed letter written by a whistleblower, which claimed that an unnamed female combat controller trainee was failing the tough Special Tactical Training Squadron, STTS, and tried to quit twice. She tried to quit twice. Unlike the 70 to 80% of men who failed to meet the combat controller requirements and are routinely assigned elsewhere, this woman was invited back and scheduled to resume her training in April. The STTS Commander Lieutenant General James Sliff insisted that the standards had not changed, even though details revealed by the unknown whistleblower were not contradicted. CMR exclusively noted the effect on SOCOM diversity mandates on changing training norms. The unknown female trainee should not be blamed for the policies made by others, but the officials who have assigned priority to diversity and inclusion mandates supersedes concerns about combat readiness and lethality should be held accountable. Potential adversaries, of course, don't care about diversities. Winning in battle should be the primary consideration. This is not the first time the dubious predictions of the social policy benefit have been proven wrong. In the early 1990s, feminist activists claimed that if women entered tactical aviation and other combat unit, rates of sexual harassment and assault would decline. Former Joint Chiefs of Staff General Martin Dempsey repeated the claim at a January 2013 news conference, predicting the ground combat assignments would increase respect for women and reduce assaults. Instead, the opposite happened. Annual Pentagon reports have shown that sexual harassment and assault cases have accelerated to new heights every year since 2007 with no end in sight. Is there a better way? Is there a better way? Army officials can justify his decision to abandon the ACFT gender-neutral standards, but only if they also reevaluate female combat assignment policies that still rely on the mistakes and miscalculations of the same feminist experts and social engineers who designed the ACFT. To fix the problem, current policymakers should revisit the 1992 Presidential Commission on Assignment of Women in the Armed Forces. After a full year of study, the commission reported women's exemption from direct ground combat units. The panel also concluded that the gender norm standards are acceptable in basic pre-commissioning and entry-level physical fitness wellness training, provided that gender norm programs are not used to qualify personnel for advanced combat training. With women eligible for combat arms, gender neutral or gender norm tests and scores are no longer tenable. Policymakers should reconsider the wisdom of assigning women to direct ground combat units and take an honest look at the consequences of the disproportionately higher rates of injuries, attrition, non-deployability, and inability to perform physically strenuous tasks. The Army adjusted the ACFT standards to help women pass the test, but the high-risk trade-offs and inverted priorities likely will not stop there. Have they learned their lesson? Unlike the structural and other engineers who must respect rules of physics in the real world, social engineering constantly ignored the science of human biology and behavior. Members of Congress should stop trusting social engineers whose claims repeatedly have been proven wrong. There should be a long overdue in-depth review of all women in combat policies that are based on discredited social theories and experiments, instead of receiving testimony only from the Pentagon officials who defend their own policies. Congressional hearings should invite independent witnesses who are prepared to challenge the unsupported beliefs of diversity advisors and social engineers who are responsible for mistakes like the ACFT. Reality compelled the Army to gender norm ACFT, and the Army's stunning reversal set a new precedent likely to be extended to all combat arms communities, including special operations forces under SOCOM, Diversity and Inclusion Strategic Plan. The next president and Congress should defend and abolish the Pentagon's office and mandates established to promote diverse percentage-based demographic quotas, not mediocrity and non-discrimination. Responsible oversight requires principled steps to restore high, uncompromised standards and sound priorities. Academic experts and uncredible advocates who are blinded by ideology should not be making policies for the military that we have. So that's going to conclude this section of Riding with the RUACH with your host, Kahan Tazadak. Leave your comments, your gripes, your bitches, your complaints. Yo, I just need to reiterate, if I offended you, I meant to. Because the truth requires no apology. And remember what the new Secretary of Defense said. Kudos to him, by the way. Ride out. You've been riding with the RUACH.
About women in combat.
Because I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles.
About women in combat.
Because I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles.
Damn, Secretary, you gave me chills with that one, bro. Rangers lead the way.